if they are talking. Well, no, they're Dana or Lisa and Nate will be talking in here, so yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't either. I don't want to have to go down there every time. So is that what you do? Well, and then I'm over there now. So that there's still 6 feet. Okay, got out the tape measure, everything. Nope. I mean, if that means we get to go. No. Good grab. Now you're going to be sweating. I would be. Okay, who wants to get the little microphone holder?
What do you think? You've done the bulb.
Oh, you know, I do have one.
The bulb is kind of comes loose. Oh,
I'm awful at those.
So
I get the mouth.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard.
They give them to us for work, and I don't really know.
But anytime I just get the lever, it's expensive every time I do it. And then I won't.
That's the way I am with the full repair. Maybe my home will just repair itself.
You can move before that.
Well, yeah.
Are we expecting full attendance, Tom?
I think so.
I mean, Carrie.
Oh, I haven't heard anything.
I haven't.
She still got a minute.
Yeah, but when you've got to get temperature taken, and she's going to be late.
Hey, I'm not judging. There's a meeting that I was running in at 6:29.54 seconds. So
That was pre-temperature taking.
that was pre-temperature taking, and I also moved all my Monday classes, big classes to Wednesday. So
No special meetings on
I'm
weekends.
getting older. I can't pull this off anymore.
I show 6:30.
Okay.
Good evening. We'll call this meeting to order for USD 348 Board of Education. May I have an approval of the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Tony has moved that we approve the agenda and Susan has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand. Aye. 6-0. Also, I got a lot of positive feedback about saying the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of meetings, so I will just invite us to do that again tonight, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, before we go into executive session, I did have a request that I wanted to bring forward just in kind of as in an announcement form, that we do try to identify ourselves before we speak. We don't use Robert's Rules of Order, so it isn't as though the president calls upon you before you're allowed to speak. And I don't want to call on people because we have a good communication vibe, and I don't want to make no shade on third graders, but I don't want it to feel like you have to raise your hand as though you are back in third grade being called upon and disrupt our communication system. But if you could, just when you want to jump in, just say your name first and then start. I think that would be the most organic way for us to continue communicating in the effective way we have, but then also being able to identify ourselves for the public who are watching at home. So thank you. I move we enter into executive session to discuss personnel pursuant to the exception for non-elected personnel under COMA, and the open with Mr. Dorothy. And the open meeting will resume back in the PAC auditorium at 6:38. 6:38. May I have a second? Tony has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. Executive session.
That's my favorite. It helps me get my steps in. And that's gonna be the way it's gonna be tonight. I'm already telling you, I always get the most steps when I don't have my watch to make every time.
The agenda is online. If you start at the, well, on the Facebook page, I believe, but if you start on the website, everybody's going to go there. It's district information and then agenda minutes policy. And then
I move we go back into executive session with Mr. Dorothy for personnel pursuant to the exception for non-elected personnel under coma, and the open meeting will resume back in the auditorium at 6:45. You need 5 minutes? 6:45. Is there a second?
Second.
Phil has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand. Aye. That's 7-0.
Megan, I moved, Phil seconded. Okay.
6:45, got it.
So we have no more executive session matters, and so the public meeting will begin at 7. So if anyone needs to powder their nose or just stand for a little bit, feel free to do that, and we'll begin at 7. All right, we will call the public part of the meeting back to order for USD 348 Board of Education. May I have an approval for the consent agenda, please?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Carrie has moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Tony has seconded. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented, please say aye and raise your right hand. All those opposed? 7-0. All right. As we have people come on in, hello. Hi. We're going to have you guys go first. So board members, though the agenda has our recognitions listed differently for social distancing reasons, we're going to kind of reverse that order. And rather than ending with cross-country recognitions, we are going to begin with cross-country recognitions. So how we will do that is I have these certificates here. And if you guys want to just, when your name is called, you can come down and I'll hand it to you and we can elbow pump and we'll just keep going on through. And I see Coach Spielman is here. So Coach Spielman, if you'd like to come up and talk about the kids the way we try to make it as normal procedurally as we usually do. But we have lots to celebrate. Thank you guys for being here tonight. The girls team won the state championship. We also had 2 boys who were state qualifiers. So what I'm going to do actually, Coach Spielman, I'm going to give you the certificates and I'll announce the names and then you can add whatever to it. We'll do it a little differently this time, okay?
Perfect.
All right, make sure I don't get these wet. All right.
All right, so the Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. We want to recognize and congratulate our girls for the 4A state championship in 2020 in a pandemic. Job well done. I'll have Coach Spielman say your name and you can talk about each person and then I'm just going to give you a little elbow pump versus the traditional handshake, okay? Here we go.
Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll just talk in general about the team this year. They had a great season. And,
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic so folks at home?
Oh, okay. We're big time here, huh? Okay. The season was a great season this year. With so many things going on, they just did a great job, and the discipline it takes to, give up some things. We have lots of traditions in cross country, and a lot of those had to change, and they did a really good job. Once in a while, we kind of moaned about certain ones we had to give up, but it all worked out. We didn't do the soup at Sabetha, and I know that was a tough one for them, but they just did a great job and placed second at league, won the regionals. Oh, I can be far, okay. And then we're state champions, and they had the lowest score that Baldwin's ever scored. They scored 39 points. 5 of the 7 girls were all state, placed in the top 20, and had some others really close. And so they just did a great job, and the dedication stuff and representing Baldwin, they just did an awesome job. And I know they would like to thank the board for all the support and all the things that they got. Through this, like I said, there were some changes that had to be made, and they did that, but there was also some things that, we're able to, keep having activities and do those things, and we understand that that's a hard decision, and they really appreciated it, and from day one, it was like, hey, this could be the last day of practice, or this could be the only meet, and so they took it really serious and did a great job. So, we'll do the girls, and then I'll talk a little bit about the 2 gentlemen, if they show up by then or not, and we'll go from there. Okay, first, Isabel Harvey, a junior. Jessica Jr. I don't think she's here tonight. Jenna Landreth, another junior. Andrew Stewart, a senior. Lily Breckeisen, freshman. Lauren Russell, a senior. Riley Smith, junior. And Bailey Smith, freshman. And then we had two gentlemen that qualified for state, Hudson Allen and Caleb Carr. And I think Caleb has basketball practice, and Hudson, if you know, he spends a lot of time working at the hardware store, so you usually run into him there. But they did a great job for qualifying for state for the both of them. It was the second year in a row that they qualified for state, which is a great accomplishment. And they did a great job there also. And led our boys team to fourth at regionals, and we were just outside of qualifying for state, but they gave it a valiant effort and ran really well. But again, we'd all like to thank everybody for everything, and we really appreciate everything that you guys do for us. Thank you.
Coach Spielman, if you could stay put. So we've got one more. He's already got it in his pile, but of course, knowing Coach Spielman, he would not say that, so I'm going to. But we also have a certificate for him. The Baldwin City Board of Education, USD 348, supports and promotes excellence in all school activities, and we wanted to give a special recognition to Coach Spielman, and also this extends to both Spielmans, because the program and the culture that they have created here has resulted in this state championship was not just another state championship. It was number 25 just for cross country. That does not include their track state championships. That's cross country alone. That's combined girls and boys. Baldwin High School cross country. This was his 25th, and that is just not something that is easily accomplished. It's certainly something, when you get to a number like 25, it can't be a fluke. It's leadership. It's the creation of a program and a culture. And this district is so lucky to have you. So we want to give you a special recognition tonight as well, Coach Spielman and Angie Spielman.
And I'll elbow both you as well. Congratulations.
Thanks again for taking the time to come tonight. Congratulations. Moving on to other recognitions, we have so much to be thankful for. We've got Thanksgiving right around the corner, and with all the fires that everybody is putting out every day, it's just so important that we take these opportunities to celebrate excellence at every opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and switch the order because Miss Deanna Kessler-Miley is here, so I'm gonna do yours next since some of the others couldn't be here. That way you don't have to wait any longer. So our Baldwin Star/Parents as Teachers program received an incredible honor. It's called the Blue Ribbon. It's a national designation, the Blue Ribbon Affiliate Award. And basically, in a nutshell, to meet the criteria, as I understand it, to receive the endorsement by the Parents as Teachers National Center as a Blue Ribbon affiliate, affiliates must be meeting at least 75% of 100 different quality indicators. This program met 95% of those indicators. So without listing everything, what those are, 75, your blue ribbon, and they didn't just sort of get blue, it's like electric blue. With 95, that is just an incredible accomplishment. And given in this environment, to receive that kind of designation really speaks to not only the leadership of that program, but the support for that program, and then also the team aspect of how all of that comes together. It's hours and hours of, you have to prove that you've met those particular designations, all of which is also very time consuming in addition to just doing that actual job. And we're so lucky to have that early childhood program, because as we learn more and more research all the time, the long-term outcomes of learning, those seeds are planted in early childhood. And so we are so fortunate in this district to have such a wonderful team. Deanna Kessler-Miley is here to accept this award tonight. So the Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. On this day, November 23rd, 2020, the Board of Education recognizes and congratulates the Baldwin Star/Parents as Teachers team, and congratulate you on a job well done with your Blue Ribbon Affiliate designation. Congratulations.
We'd like to say thank you to the board too. We have awesome support from our building administration and Dr. Illingwood and our superintendent, and from you guys. And we couldn't do it without your support. And we know that you feel like early childhood is really important. And so thank you for supporting us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Diana.
All right, we're going to keep kind of shuffling our order based on who is able to be with us in person tonight. So I'm going to move now to Teacher of the Year nominees. This is, Ashley Troth is here tonight, and we have two Teacher of the Year nominees, one at the elementary level, one at the secondary level. Ashley Troth was the elementary nominee and was designated for that at our district level. Again, this is not just something that you sign up for. There's so much work that goes into that nomination process and then the granting of that. And so, Ashley, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the work you are doing at the elementary level. And we have a certificate for you. At this point, it's now advanced to the state. So because of the pandemic, some of those deadlines have been shifted a bit. So Ashley is our proud USD 348 Teacher of the Year nominee, is now a part of that process. But she is our person for USD 348 for Teacher of the Year, and it's just a really, really big deal. So the Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. On this day, November 23rd, 2020, the Board of Education recognizes and congratulates Ashley Troth as our Teacher of the Year nominee at the elementary level. Congratulations, Ashley. All right, continuing with our other Teacher of the Year from the secondary level. She was not able to join us in person. However, she did send an email that she asked that I read to the board, but I'm going to go ahead and read her designation as well. The Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. On this day, November 23rd, 2020, the Board of Education recognizes and congratulates Kirsten Olson, who is our secondary level Teacher of the Year nominee. So congratulations, Kirsten. She's going to be watching from home, so let's give her a round of applause as well. And I was asked that I read this email from her. It reads, "I'm really, really sorry. We have people staying with us this week and I can't make it. Thank you. Can you pass on how grateful I am to live in a town with so much support from the parents, admin, and the board? That sounds like a line, but I mean it deeply. I can't imagine working in any other district in America through these past crazy months. Thank you." All right, we'll make sure Kirsten receives this certificate. Next, stay with our teacher awards. This is the Horizon Award nominees, and we have 2 of those as well. Again, you get an elementary designation and a secondary designation, and the Horizon Award essentially is for a newcomer, a teacher who has shown outstanding promise and potential and aptitude within their first year of teaching. So that's how the Horizon Award is different than the Teacher of the Year nominee. And our 2 recipients are Madison Michael from the elementary level and then David Yu from the secondary level. So I'm going to read those certificates as though they're here, and we'll still give them their round of applause so that if they're watching from home, they can still receive that recognition. The Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. On this day, November 23rd, 2020, the Board of Education recognizes and congratulates Madison Michael for the Horizon Award nominee in 2020. Congratulations, Madison. And for the secondary one, the Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. On this day, November 23rd, 2020, the Board of Education recognizes and congratulates David Yu as the Horizon Award nominee who teaches at the high school. Congratulations. So again, we'll make sure that those certificates end up where they need to be. The last one I have is to the Eudora School District, District 491. We wanted to give them a special thanks because in these crazy times when we've been unable to use certain facilities, being good neighbors is really important, and Eudora was a great neighbor to us. We did not have a place to have homecoming or senior recognition night, and that's not just for football players, that's also for senior dance team members. Some of the other senior recognitions were put off because of that, but it isn't just football that's recognized on fall senior night, so that affected a lot of people. And they weren't able to do it on their home field, and I'm really thankful for our administration who had already been working on a plan B. But Eudora allowed us to have our homecoming and senior night, and it was also our planned military appreciation night, which is has become a really important tradition in our district. And they gave us a place to have all of that, in addition to a playoff game, if I am remembering that correctly. So they were great neighbors to us and allowed us to use their facilities. They didn't have to say yes, but they did. And I think it's important to recognize when cool neighborly stuff happens. So that sounded really professional, didn't it? Let's try this instead. The Baldwin City Board of Education of USD 348 supports and promotes excellence in all school activities. On this day, November 23rd, 2020, the Board of Education recognizes, congratulates, and thanks the Eudora School District, District 491, for hospitality and the usage of their facilities. Thank you, Eudora. All right, that takes care of all of our recognitions for this evening. Again, we have a lot to do, but we also have a lot to be thankful for. So thank you for everyone who contributes to that. And now we will roll sleeves up and get to work. First up is public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to make public comment in person? Okay, we did receive 2 comments via the electronic submission process, so I will read them in the order in which I received them. The first one is from 12 days ago, and this is from Jamie Cox. And it says, "Good morning. I have already been in communication with the co-op board, but wanted to share this with our local Board of Education as well. I wanted to bring forward that 3- and 4-year-old children who are unable to receive speech services, and in parentheses, and other services, I'm sure, in parentheses, through the school district if they are not enrolled in the preschool program. Private practices are full with waiting lists, and there are children in our district that desperately need these services. I am sure that there are other parents like myself that do not wish to send their child to school at this time, but in the past, they have still been able to receive those services they need by the age of 3. As always, I am filled with gratitude for all that you do. Respectfully, Jamie Cox." An addendum to that was that Jamie also wanted me to mention that in her particular situation that has already been resolved, but she still asked that I share the public comment just for informational purposes in case there are other parents of children in similar situations, just as an awareness piece. But she did ask that that I also relay that she was very pleased with how that had been resolved already. So this is a dated public comment, but by law I'm still required to read it, and so she wanted me to make sure we've got it fixed, but there might be other parents who don't know what their options are, so yes, please read it. So there's that one. The next one I received was just this afternoon. This is from Joe and Leanne Bathke, and it reads, "Dear USD 348 Board of Education, we are writing to ask you to consider staying the course with the hybrid 3-day/remote option for our public schools for the 2021 spring semester. Our district has done fairly well with the current setup, and we don't see why anything should change for spring. If we want to stay on the path to give our 2021 seniors the best year possible under trying circumstances, we think the district should stick with the current plan. Although we have had optimistic news about COVID-19 vaccines, we still don't know when those vaccines are going to be available to our essential workers, like teachers and school staff. Also, please note, the current vaccine is not approved to be given to anyone under age 18. Parenthesis, and the subsequent vaccines haven't been approved for anyone under age 18 either. To be honest, none of these first-round vaccines have been tested on children and probably won't be for some time, end parenthesis. Despite the promising news about vaccines, the numbers of current COVID-19 cases and deaths are spiking with no end in sight. Current numbers are higher than they were in the spring 2020 when we closed everything down, and deaths have passed 250,000 in America alone. Right now, epidemiologists are projecting that those numbers will be worse in 2 weeks when those people who ignored science and community well-being return from their Thanksgiving Day feasts, bringing COVID-19 with them. The same epidemiologists are predicting that we won't hit the peak of this current spike in infections until January 2021. Parenthesis, I can provide you with documentation for all of this information upon request, in parenthesis. As parents of a student currently enrolled in the hybrid option, we feel it is vital that the USD 348 school district stick with their current plan and continue the hybrid 3-day/remote option. Thank you for your time and service, Joe and Leanne Bathke." And that is all I have for public comment. And I don't see anyone else in person that is here to make public comment. Okay. All right, moving on to financial report. We have none this time, so we will go ahead and move on to administrative reports. And with us this evening, we have a special education update, and Dan Ray is here to join us. Did we sanitize? Give Megan just a moment to sanitize between the last speaker, and then we will hear from Mr. Ray. Thanks for joining us tonight.
And thank you, Board. I want to say it's quite fortuitous to the order of the way the meeting has been structured, because I'm happy to be able to follow up on the public comments. I think they did a nice job of actually framing what I'm going to present to you tonight, in that while the emails may not seem to be that similar, they're exactly what we're dealing with at the co-op. For those of you who haven't met me before, my name is Dan Ray. I'm the director of the Central Kansas Cooperative in Education that provides special education services to Baldwin, Eudora, and Wellsville. I will say that I got a simultaneous email from one of the public commenters today, about 12 days ago, same thing, and we responded to that immediately. But it did highlight one of our problems that we've had with special education in this COVID crisis. One of the things that I think is very difficult to juxtapose is the safety of our kids and also being able to provide the services that they are mandated to receive under the law. And I do think that that first comment highlighted an error in communication on our part that we didn't make real clear to parents. As a result, just to preface my presentation that I sent you earlier today, which I hope all of you have had a chance to look at, that's a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more uplifting, I think, the numbers are, than what I want to tell you right now. But I do want to say that in our response to the hybrid model, to the remote learning model, to the navigating change model that we've been experiencing this year, in terms of trying to be able to provide the supports in different environments, still mandated to provide the supports within the framework of the IEPs that each of our students have. I think it's been it's been a learning experience. And at the midway point of this year, we're having some meetings tomorrow. I met with our school psychologist today to kind of lay out a framework of communication to parents who have opted to withdraw their students, disenroll their students, and to forego the services that they're entitled to should they not go homeschool. What we're doing is we're trying to create an option where parents can still do that, and yet still maintain the safety that we have worked so diligently to provide all of our students in 348, in 491, and in 289. So I won't bore you with the details of that plan, just to let you know that we are actively pursuing parents who have children who are not at this point in time receiving services at their parents' request, but we want to make sure that's the decision that they want to move forward with. So thank you for having me tonight, and without further ado, I want to just let you know that the presentation that I sent to you is based upon a presentation that I presented to our board last month, and then our board president, Chris Perry, had said, hey, could you make those numbers Baldwin specific and present them to our board? So that's what I'm going to do. As I mentioned, we provide the special education services to all three districts. We have about almost 200 employees. We're right at 200 employees. We are down employees from last year based upon the number of resignations that we received, primarily in paraprofessional ranks. So the teachers' assistants that we are down still about 25% of our para ranks. But in Baldwin, the numbers are not as bad. In Baldwin, we're only down about 15%. And with the decrease in number of students, that works okay. We're still able to provide all the services that we need to be able to provide in the school and in a remote learning environment. So I just real quickly, I don't know how many of you have the presentation in front of you, but by the district, Baldwin itself has 238 students with disabilities, and that represents 17.1% of the population. Just as a comparison, Eudora has 338. They have 19.1% of their kids identified. And Wellsville has 161, or 20% of their students identified. And those numbers seem a little bit high. They may seem high to you. They seem high to me. They are high by state standards. If you want to compare that, if you want to take those three districts in total, we have 737 students, or 18.6% of the total population of three districts. By comparison, Kansas has 77,000 students with disabilities, which represents 14.9% of the population of school-age kids. So our percentages are higher, And I will also qualify that by saying that smaller districts have a tendency to have higher percentages, just because of the more intimate nature of the community relationship. And I don't want to say that we over-identify, but I'll get to that later on in the presentation. I do think that we take care of our kids, and I think that that's reflective of some of these numbers. I broke it down by disability because I'm that kind of a numbers nerd, and I did spell it out this time for the majority of the disabilities, although for whatever reason visual impairment went to BI. I don't know. But if you'll notice, those are the disability categories that students can qualify under. And the representation of those different numbers are the number of kids that we have identified in each of those categories. If you look at the next slide, in USD 348, that represents just the kids in 348. So you'll notice that we have 69 kids with learning disabilities, 80 kids with developmental delay. And if I could explain that developmental delay is a category that catches all of our preschool kids for the most part, unless they have specific chromosomal disabilities or orthopedic impairments, which we can qualify them under because it's more clean cut. For developmental delays, that's more all-encompassing, it's more of a catch-all, and that developmental delay has to go away by the age of 10, and a harder label has to be assigned by their 10th birthday. So that would explain why we have so many developmental delay. Learning disability is the second category, followed by other health impairment and speech-language disability, which are pretty closely related. The other health impairment does capture ADHD. By the way, if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be glad to answer this for you. I'd also broke it down by grade level, and you'll notice that we do identify early. We believe in early intervention, and therefore we're going to see a higher number of kids qualified early on, and as they receive the services and develop the compensatory skills that we try to instill in the students with disabilities, a lot of them fail to qualify later on in their educational career. To the point where by the time we reach seniors, that represents our lowest population. That's true across the district. It's also true across all 3 districts. And you'll see the graphs that represent those 2 things. A few other fun statistics that I put in here. And fun statistics do go together. But across all 3 districts, we only have 84 students that are eligible for transportation as a related service. It doesn't mean that we've only got 84 kids that ride a bus. It means that sometimes they require additional special transportation, and that's true for 20 students in USD 348. Students with disabilities just happen to be, the students with disabilities represent 87.2% of our interlocal, which is about the same ratio. So it's reflective of kids without disabilities. 90.8% in Baldwin. Girls represent only a third of the students that we serve, while boys represent 2/3. And I'll leave that to your own comments to your spouses later. But it is true that a lot of kids, and if you look at the other health impaired category of ADHD, it's very common that ADHD impacts boys a lot at a lot higher rate. And given that we have a lot of kids that qualify into that category, it's not too surprising that 35.7% are boys and 64%, are girls, while 64% are guys. And that's the way that goes. We have extended school year services. 13.5% of students are eligible for those services across the interlocal, as compared to 15.5% in Baldwin. And that's a category that just means that there's, I believe, 13 different things that can qualify a student for extended school year, 13 different qualifiers. Most of them have to do with regression and making sure that we provide those services on an extended school year basis means that we don't have so many kids losing some of the skills that they've developed during the school year. So we're proud of those services as well. We were able to provide those in person this summer. We are hoping to be able to provide those in person next summer. So we'll just see how things go. We were kind of the precursor. The USY programs were the reintroduction to the navigating change as we were coming back off of our shutdown. So that worked very, very well with no incidents of any infection in the summer programs. Okay, only 5.4% of students across all students with disabilities are on behavior intervention plans. That's what a BIP is. We do have a behavior specialist in our district. We also have an autism specialist that provides, in our local, that provides service to all 3 districts. And they deal a lot with the behavior intervention plans. There's only 4.2% of the students on IEPs that are on behavior intervention plans in Baldwin. A few other facts for fun: 97 students are on IEPs for gifted across our local. That represents 2.45% of our population. Now, I will tell you that gifted population in Kansas only represents 2.25% of the population. Nationwide, the percentage is 8.9%. Now, I know that our qualifications are a little bit different, and there are a lot of things that in an ideal world I'd love to be able to tackle. Gifted education in Kansas is one of them. I think we do great by our kids who are qualified for gifted services. Kansas is one of only 7 states that actually has special education serving kids with gifted education. All of the other states either have it as an independent entity or they don't offer gifted education, but most of them do, and it's siloed differently than special education. One of the reasons that our numbers are low in gifted education, I truly believe, is because the identification process is much more stringent. So we do have some kiddos. When we have kiddos identified as gifted, they're really gifted. So there's not much over-identification that's happening in the gifted realm. But like I said, we do provide a great array of services for our gifted populations under special education. And then the last fun fact that I had was, as an aside, if you don't want your child to be in special education, don't name them Jackson if you're a boy or Madison if you're a girl. That means they're 200% more likely. And I have no idea why those 2 names just jumped out. And you're saying, Dan, why are you looking at this stuff? I told you I'm dad nerd, so anyway. But it is kind of interesting. I think Jackson's a lovely name for a boy. I love the name Madison for a girl, so I don't know if I'd let that deter you too much, but it's just an interesting kind of a thing. So what does this mean? And this is something that I put forth to the board. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but I do think that we need to look at the identification process. When we're identifying 18.6% of our kids in our schools as needing special education on an IEP, and that does not include the gifted population. When we're identifying that high a percentage, we have a tendency to dilute a little bit of the services that we are providing with our 200 employees. We also need more employees to be able to provide those services, so there is a cost factor involved. I am not into denying kids the services that they need. We do have one confounding factor in Kansas that makes our percentage a little bit higher in this state than it is in the nation. And that is that we do require parental consent for any changes on the IEP that exceed 25% of the student's school day or 25% of the services that they are receiving, one way or the other. So when a student reaches that eligibility age where they don't qualify for an IEP anymore, the parents can say, that's okay, I still want to keep them on an IEP. And by law, Kansas statute, we have to maintain that IEP. Student may not have disabilities, so that's 18.6%, or in Baldwin, the 17.1, doesn't necessarily mean that that many kids actually need special education. It does mean that they have qualified in the past, and that for whatever reason, we're not able to graduate them off of that IEP. Is that a terrible thing? Again, there's a dilution of services that happens. Plus, we bump students. Our job in special education is to become useless. We don't want to have a job anymore. We want to make sure that our kids are given the independence skills, taught the independent skills necessary so that they no longer need us. And that's what we're all about at ECKCE. We want to make sure that we're building that independence so that when a kid gloriously no longer needs our services, that's a cause for celebration, not a cause for contention. I do think that there are some statutes that need to be changed in the state. I'll leave that for another day. And certainly we've got more fish to fry this year. So we will be doing an identification process throughout the interlocal with our school psychologists and determining our eligibility process and making sure that it's consistent across all 3 districts. That analysis is already ongoing. We're looking at how we can streamline things to make sure that we're being as consistent as possible so that we can get the services to the kids that really truly need them. So with that, I will ask if you have any questions. And if there are none, I do want to thank you as Board of Education for always supporting the students of Baldwin and for supporting us as an interlocal, and I hope that you feel that same support coming your direction. If you have any questions at all, or if you do receive other emails that possibly I wasn't part of the copy on, please let me know, because our job as an interlocal is to make sure that the parents are informed and empowered to be able to act on behalf of their kids with special needs. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think that the decline in people, teachers and so forth, do you think that's because of COVID, or was it declining before that?
No, it is definitely because of COVID. I will say that we've always had a difficult time filling all of our paraprofessional positions because it, even though we've increased the pay rate for paras every year that I've been here, it's still not enough for the work that they do. And so we continue to add to that, and we continue to be more and more competitive with our surrounding districts in terms of pay. That said, we had full para ranks last year, and until we ran into this difficulty with people feeling like they are maybe putting their health at risk, we were at full capacity. And now we are down, like I said, in Baldwin about 15%, and across our local about 25%. So just in the paraprofessional ranks. I will say that the teacher resignations that I received this year, because we received 2 of them after the start of the school year, were definitely COVID related. We've been able to replace those positions for the most part. We had to consolidate some early childhood programming in Baldwin because we didn't have enough. And fortunately, our enrollment numbers warranted that we could do that. So, but yeah, they definitely were related to COVID.
I'm shocked that this gives us the numbers. Thank you for coming.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. And let me know if you have any other questions. I'm available via email. My cell phone's on. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. The next item under administrative reports is the IC outdoor recess policy amendment. That was sent over. I hope everyone has had a chance to look at that. Mr. Wallsmith also provided an explanation for that change. Anything you'd like to add, Mr. Wallsmith? Do board members have any questions about that amendment? Are we comfortable with going ahead and making a motion? Okay. I move we accept the BESIC outdoor recess policy amendment as presented.
Second.
Carrie has seconded. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? 7-0. Thank you. All right. Moving on to old business, we have an equity committee update. Mr. Brown, would you like to talk to us a little bit about that, please?
I'd be delighted.
Thank you so much.
The equity committee did meet last Wednesday evening on the 18th of November, and we had sort of suspended meetings for the fall, so this was our first meeting since back in August as we were trying to get school started. And so part of the goal of this meeting was to try to get some concrete goals that we could identify to get us back on track and to get us moving forward. And so I'm just going to highlight the 4 projects that we have sort of identified that we would like to move forward on. The first, and this is in no order of importance, this is just the way they happen in the meeting. The first is that we think it might be beneficial to consult with the Mangano group at Baker, who is a equity group of minority students at Baker that work to try to bring issues of racial justice up on Baker's campus. And so I've taken the responsibility, since I work at Baker, to contact the leaders of Mangano and see if we might be able to consult with them on some of the activities and some of the ideas that they are trying to employ this semester and this year. And so we're going to try to meet with them probably at the beginning of the spring semester when Baker gets back underway. The second issue that we talked about is that Susan had identified a rubric for assessing some equity issues in the current textbooks that we use in our district. And she had sent that to us way back in September, again, when we were trying to get school started again. And so we're going to have a look at that equity rubric and try to have some discussion about ways to utilize that. We know that purchasing new textbooks this year may be somewhat difficult, but what we want to try to do is assess where we are in terms of racial representation in the textbooks that we're currently using, so we know what the status is and where we can go. The third issue that we discussed is talking about a potential of a statement that we may bring to the larger board at the beginning of next year about our position on equity issues here in the district, making it clear that this is something in these turbulent times that we feel fairly strongly about. And so to work on this equity statement, we employed the writer on the committee, Andy Parks, to maybe draft a statement that we can look at in our December meeting and perhaps bring to you all to consider sometime in January, February. And then finally, we've talked about the possibility of adding a course to the curriculum, perhaps not this year, but projecting it for next year, that would deal with equity issues at the high school level. And so we asked Brent to look into that, perhaps identify some potential instructors that might be interested in developing a course like that, and to look at what curriculum courses are available currently through the state curriculum guide that might fit this goal, so that we can start a discussion in a more formal way at the high school level to look at some of these issues. The other issue that we've talked about and that we would like to continue to push is that we'd like to look at the data as a committee on equity issues related to suspension and disciplinary issues throughout the district, and see whether there's any issues of inequitable suspensions or discipline that might be things that we need to address. We don't anticipate that there's going to be huge differences there, so we aren't looking for problems, but we just want to see what the data is to be able to identify whether there are issues that may be things that we should look at more closely. After not meeting for, almost 3 months, and trying to get this back on track, I thought we had a very productive meeting, and we do plan on meeting again on December 2nd and following up on some of these issues. But I hope to be able to bring a report to you all, certainly, if not in December, in January, so I can update you on our progress.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Tony. And no problem if it's January, because we all know how this next month is going to go. But thank you all who are serving on that committee and for outlining those objectives. All right, moving on to the second semester education plan. Mr. Dorothy is going to talk to us and kind of, we also want to in our discussion, make sure that we recap all of the lenses with which we've used to study this issue and this decision for next semester. But I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dorothy. We'll have opportunity to discuss and kind of get that, not that any of us have forgotten it, probably even for a moment, but just to kind of bring everything back into focus. Mr. Dorothy?
Yes, if you recall, last month we had a discussion about this. Well, not last month, I guess, for a special meeting. We had a discussion regarding this, and the board came up with a number of questions of things that they wanted to see some information on. Some of that I think we've been successful with. Some things were difficult to find, but we tried to fill in the blanks as much as we can so that to help you with your discussion this evening. So I'll kind of start through this, and we'll try and move through this quickly, but most certainly I want to cover what needs to be covered. First of all, one of the things that was asked by the board was a survey of parents, staff, and the students regarding a decision for second semester. And so we surveyed parents in the district, we surveyed all the staff in the district, and we surveyed grades 7 through 12 in the district for their input back on how they felt about that. And we tried to keep those surveys fairly short. The longer you make them, most certainly the less chance you have of getting them back. I felt like we got great response. Most times when you send out surveys, to ever think you'd get over 50% is unbelievable, and most certainly we got great numbers. So I think the information is good, and we've got quite a bit of information. So I guess we'll start there. Janet Craig Hare put together a summary of that data. And I was going to have her come forward and just do a brief summary of that information, some of the highlights of that, and so I'll let her talk here for just a few minutes about that survey.
Okay, as you can see from the report, most of our responses said to continue in the same manner as what we're doing now. So that's kind of the majority of that. But we also felt it was important to look at the subgroups. And within the subgroups, we broke it down between the parents and the different parents and guardians, the different groups, the staff, with the different types of staff, their roles that they play in the building, and then the students also. And I think you get a little bit different lens when you look at those subgroups. For example, parents and guardians at the junior high and at the high school were more in favor of switching to an on-site 5 days a week. One of the things I sent you an update this afternoon where it says the parents of hybrid students in grades 7 through 12, that really should have been 7 and 8. So when I did verify our numbers on that, there were 114 parents and guardians of hybrid students in 7 and 8. So that should be 7 and 8. One other thing we wanted to look at is on the staff side of that, the staff at the junior high also said 5 days a week would be their preference, the majority of them. And so then we also looked at that, as Mr. Dorothy and I were talking this afternoon, said, what about just those that teach 7th and 8th grade? Because the 6th grade teachers are already 5 days a week. So we wanted to pull just that little subsection out. So I added that line for VJ to have 7th and 8th grade teaching staff, and that's only the ones that teach 7th and 8th grade students. So with that, it was the 33%. So again, that was the higher level, just looking at 7th and 8th grade teachers. The other thing was looking at the on-site and hybrid students for grades 7 and 8. So if you look at that one and the percentages, the highest percentage is continuing in the same format. However, if you would add together the have all persons go 5 days a week with or without remote learning, that percentage is actually higher. So that's about 52%. So there are some, everyone says continue what we're doing, there are some pockets that say, but 5 days a week would be better if we could do that. So just little select subgroups. So we thought that was important that you kind of see that from that lens as well. You may see on any of the staff ones, there's an asterisk there. And that asterisk indicates that we have shared staff between buildings. So you might notice on the comments or comments on both in multiple buildings, so like the junior high and high school, because staff are shared between those two buildings. We kept those in the same, in their buildings where they responded about that, because that's also actionable items for the principals to follow up on. So we didn't want to delete anything. Also for the parents and guardians, we asked them to complete a survey for each child they had enrolled in school. So if they have children at the same school or at multiple schools, sometimes they just copy those responses over and over again. So sometimes you will see the same responses, but they represent different kids that they have in the buildings. All the comments that are listed there for the people that chose other. So the respondent that chose other and then put a comment in there. We included all those comments for you. The other piece is parents and guardians only were asked what their preliminary decision would be. So if you had to send your kids back to school or continue remote learning or switch to one of the options, what would it be? And that was only asked the parents and guardians. And with that, I guess the things to note would be the ones that want to switch to the on-site or hybrid and the ones that want to switch to remote. So that's where it's going to impact our numbers. So looking at that, and some of them is kind of a wash, like at the high school, 12 want to come in, 12 want to go to remote. So that's not really going to impact our numbers that much. Also remember, this is respondents for 1,026 kids, hopefully. We don't know if anyone took the survey multiple times. We have about 1,300 students, so it doesn't include everyone, so there's some people that we're not capturing with these responses. I would say the ones to kind of be on the lookout for would be like second grade, kind of fourth grade and fifth grade, because those are the higher numbers, and we already have larger, close to the 17 class sizes on those. So those are ones to kind of look out for. And then again, all the comments on here relate to the other. You also received an addendum that just had some other comments. Those are the narrative responses, a lot of comments on there, multiple pages. Hopefully got through all that over the weekend. A lot of those dealt with health, they dealt with safety issues, they dealt with cleaning issues, programming. And then there's a lot of gratitude. I noticed that too. Just people saying, we've seen in other districts, we see what we're doing here. Thank you for your support. Thank you for doing what we're doing. So I noticed a lot of gratitude in there. But also from the comments, there was a lot of action items that I think we can pull out and respond to, whether it be cleaning issues, program issues that we can do some improvements on, suggestions for how we could rearrange things a little bit differently. A lot of just good ideas from that. So in a nutshell, that's the survey responses. Any questions?
Does anybody have questions about that? I don't want to derail the discussion, but I emailed Jana this. One of the things I was struck by was the student response. Because what kid doesn't want life just to be normal? And I was really taken aback in a wow way, the number of kids that responded, yeah, we should probably just keep doing what we're doing. I thought that was incredible for our kids to be responding that way. So anyway, just a little side note, speaking of gratitude and amazing kids that we have in this district. Okay, so any questions about what Jana just presented with the survey? Okay, then we can move on to the next item off the checklist.
I think what Jana's up here, I think another question that was asked was looking at another remote option. Presently, of course, we use the Celis. You guys are all aware of that. But the question was asked, was there another way or other options that we can look at that might work for a second semester? So Jana did some work. Jana did the original work in vetting the Celis to begin with. So Jana did some work on looking at other options. And so Jana, if you would like to add to that right now.
Sure. So we looked at Edgenuity, which is one a lot of other districts are using. Apex is another one. Both of those actually only offer courses for grades 6 through 12, so we would need another solution for our elementary students, so we have to be going on 2 different platforms. There is a cost on those, so if we would switch now, we've already made a financial investment for a an annual subscription for what we're currently using. The cost when we originally looked at it was around $100 a student. And some of the online programs also do it as a per course option. So that was one of the reasons why we stuck with the SOLAS, just thinking that this gives us the most options to be able to put kids in and out of programs and courses as we needed to, which we do have quite a variety, over 300 courses that we're offering for kids right now. So there's a good variety out there. There is another one that we could explore if we want to for another time. It's called K-12, I believe. It used to be something else, I can't think of the name of it right now, that I believe Garnett is using. And so that is an option. We did talk to some other districts that are having their teachers, and a lot of our neighboring districts are using Google Classroom. Their teachers are setting things up. They're doing the teaching. They're teaching in person and remote students all at the same time. And the comments we've heard from teachers on that is that it's exhausting. It's really hard to do that. It's taking a toll on them. And I think that was our original decision. We said, if we do this, then we need our teachers to focus on your in-person and your quarantine kids, and then we need another section for remote, and just kind of separate those two. So that was kind of our decision on moving that direction. Guess, are there any other questions on that?
One of my main things is I was hoping that we could find out information on doing the Zoom into a class or something, but apparently that's why there's not much information, because maybe it's too difficult. But I would be interested in looking more into other programs, I guess, like K-12 or whatever. Just because, I mean, I've been pretty vocal about SLS, but the more I hear, it seems like districts are dropping it repeatedly. I think there were up to about 5 states that have dropped it, so I would be really interested in exploring that, especially if the equity committee might want to look at it. When you're looking at textbooks that address racial issues, SLS would definitely be part of that. Hopefully we won't need to use this very long, I hope. But, you know, I'd be happy to do some research if that would be helpful. I don't know, I don't know curriculum, but I know diversity. But that would be something I'd be really, really interested in, because the board would be really not doing due diligence if we didn't look into it more. I know for the second semester, I don't know how practical it is, but we should definitely be, I don't know if it's practical or not. I know I was listening to the state funding committee last week, and they have allotted, I think, $5 million for remote learning. I'm not sure if the whole $5 million goes to remote learning, but they've just opened up more money for remote learning. So that might be something we'll look into too, to kind of compensate if there is a funding issue there. But that's something that is near and dear to me, even though I don't think we've had any complaints other than me. But so I just want to make that comment there.
And Carrie, was that the remote learning support grant that you're talking about?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. We are actually looking at that. It does have specific things that you can apply for, so we're working on with the Recreation Commission on how we could do that and how we can provide additional, what we see as needs based on our survey is some hands-on opportunities, so hands-on in the social pieces. Those are what we're missing with what we're currently doing. So could we provide those through like an in-school, after-school type program?
Yeah, and now that you're saying that, that was one of the comments that I noticed in some of here, and in my own, like, talking to people, that connection, and with the self, because it's just like a little video, and it's hard to review it, and so forth, but yeah, no, that does trigger that.
Yeah. So we're looking at that one to see. It is a quick turnaround, because the money has to be applied for, approved, and then everything expended by the end of December. So hopefully we have a really good idea and we can just rush it through. And
it's going to be first come, first served.
Yes. Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, that's what I'm gonna do.
It says state finance, it's like, all right, we gotta get it,
Yes.
get it out, go.
Yeah, we can get a good idea and get it to them fast, then that's our hope. So, and then do some additional hands-on programming for our kids.
So, thank you very much.
Yes.
I so appreciate it, thank you.
And I just wanted to be really clear. Clear about the equity committee is not vetting curricula. We are simply investigating resources that we can give to our experts in the vetting curricula area, which is Jana and Edman and Bill will be looking at that. So, I mean, the explicit task of vetting material is not something we're taking.
Yeah,
Board members, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can we please identify ourselves when we speak, per request at home before we just, Kelly Bethel Smith, no, I'm talking, that kind of thing, that way people at home, no, that's okay, we haven't been doing it, it's just a reminder, thank you. Go ahead.
okay, and to that point, then, I mean, in a broad sense, looking at racial issues with, as well as, it's basically a textbook, so if we're looking at if there's racial issues in our hard books, then you should be looking at if there's racial issues in our online program.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. This is Susan Schiffman.
Oh, sorry, that's Christy.
We are looking at resources for our curriculum experts to be looking at in hard curriculum and virtual, I guess. And I agree with you, it should go both ways. Good.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, to continue on, another question brought up by board members was if the county's recommendation of 17 would continue beyond. Both the superintendent from Lawrence and I both asked if they would be willing to relax those numbers. They said, well, sure, we'll consider doing that. They are not at this point ready to change that. But I think they are willing to look at that at some point and say, maybe we could open that up. That is kind of a controlling factor in our decisions that we make with class sizes. So, at least right now, they have not been willing to make a change. They said we would consider it. So, that's kind of where that question is. There were questions about gating criteria, multiple questions about gating criteria, and most certainly looking at other districts or other areas that had gating criteria. The county did change the gating criteria here. I believe they considered mental health in part of the discussion. Bert Nash was at the table. Came to the table and said that it obviously, by data, looks like it's safer to be in schools that are doing all the mitigating factors. It was safer for kids to be there than it was outside because most of the infections were occurring outside of school, not in schools. So, thus the reason for going to allowing school to continue in orange. And especially making that change, that was a difficult change. The optics were not perfect because it was right when we're beginning to peak here. Most certainly I got some questions from some folks about why would you do that? Well, I didn't, but the county decided that they would allow that, and we had that discussion, how will this look, and most certainly they had to communicate that well, why are we willing to do this and allow schools to stay in session when we move to the orange phase. So that also, most certainly they made some changes to the athletics part of it. That was, they basically requested that athletes in Douglas County wear a mask if they're going to participate, either practice or in games. And ask is not a good word because that's not how it was presented to us. Basically what we got is they felt strongly enough about it that it was either that or have a health order that would say no activities in the county. Well, we didn't want to go there. We needed to continue activities. They're extremely important for kids, and I'll say that over and over again. I understand their concerns. So basically it was, okay, guys, what do we got to have so we can keep kids going? Their thing was, if you can put them in masks and limit spectators, which we were already limiting spectators, that we would be willing to continue that even into orange if you wanted to continue that. So that was a major part of that change that they made. And we have not tried, we most certainly are having our practices, but we have not tried that out in a competition to see how that's going to work. I think Mr. Stavanis has put out quite a bit of information about how we believe that's going to work and what the county has said this would be okay, so that we can keep kids participating. And most certainly, as you witnessed this evening and through Gary's reports, our activities have done very well this fall. And so I think that was, you know, the whole reason we have activities is most certainly it's part of kids' education, to participate in what it is the kid wants to participate, whatever that is. And most certainly that makes them a well-rounded student, and so it's important for them to participate. So I think if we can keep them involved in that, that's important. They also, I mean, they do better in school when they're doing that. So anyway, that's kind of getting a little ways from what the initial question was. But so there was some changes to the gating criteria. Let's see. There was questions about the scorecard. You know, we brought that up last time. I really feel like the scorecard, not to ignore it, I don't know that it's informing for our decisions, but I think the scorecard is a measure for the county on a community basis for them to say, are we headed in the right direction or not headed in the right direction? So I don't know that it's a direct for our decision. It's more of a community thing. Okay, comparative data. It was asked last time, I think Phil asked, can we get some comparison? Unfortunately, right now, there's not great information to be able to compare well. So what we did is we had Megan call surrounding districts to say, okay, what is your experience? How did you start? What have you had to shift to? And what are you right now? So she most certainly collected that information, and we tried to contact those districts around us. Plus, we included Spring Hill, as it was one brought up. We tried to include DeSoto, as it was another one brought up, but I don't think she could ever get a response from DeSoto. We most certainly wanted Lawrence in there, but could not get, although I think I pretty well know their story. We couldn't get a response back from them, but most of the districts were very good at kind of going through, and of course then they immediately want to know, well, what did you guys do, and what have you done? So Megan got to have a lot of those conversations, but went through, and then I think Megan sent you that information regarding how other districts have been doing that. And that's about as close as I could get right now to have accurate information. There's just not much out there yet. I hope that a day will come that they'll be able to say, well, this district did this and this district. That would be good information to have. Let's see. I did send you information about substitutes, absences by staff, by month, and you could see the days, how many were gone those days. I did break it down for you. One of the charts was strictly teachers, our teachers only. The other chart was all employees that were gone, that were in there. And so that kind of gave you a comparison a little bit about how many subs and staff we were missing at times. Each building has gone through a challenge through this year on being stretched to the limit on staff. And each one has kind of taken their turn. Most certainly, the primary center and Dr. Eva Gwynn have been the latest stress points. In fact, Dr. Eva Gwynn sent out a message to give a heads up to the primary center parents last Friday to say, hey, we're right there. If we lose anybody more over the weekend, we may not be able to open. Thank goodness I never got a phone call from Dr. Gwynn, so I assumed. And it turned out it was pretty good. We ended up filling a lot of the substitutes that we needed for that morning. So, but I will say this, every single day though, staff is stretching to cover positions. We might get most of the teachers covered, but then like the library's got to be covered. So I know people like Dr. Eva Gwynn have had to step in and cover those in order to make sure they're there for students. So it's been stretched. I know the high school went through their challenge early, and they were stretched. I know that they were in the classrooms, principals were in the classrooms trying to cover so we could make it work and keep us in school. Hopefully, we can keep that making happening, but I see that as probably our first time that I might have to say we're going to close a building. Luckily, maybe just a building, not a district. The more we can keep the district open, the better. And hopefully, it's only short periods of time. And by saying that, I don't mean closed. I mean we'll shift to online learning for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it takes to work out the logistics on that. Let's see. Okay, just a couple of things. I had asked Lisa to look back because I felt like this might be helpful. And I'm not even sure exactly what her report shows yet, but I think she sent something to you. But I asked her, please go back and look at some of the incidents that we've had this year so far and tell me how, and there's a little guesswork here, of course, but tell me how that would have looked if we'd have had all the students 5 days a week back in the buildings. How might that have looked and how would that have been changed? So I guess I'll ask Lisa if she would come up and see if she would like to make a few comments about that and how that might look, because I think that's important to know for the board.
I didn't want to waste my time. All right, thank you. So I went ahead and kind of compared, well, not really compared, I got together 3 different scenarios and tried to cover some in secondary education and one in at the elementary level. You know, so we could kind of compare what we're doing right now, hybrid, and maybe what it would look like numbers-wise if we did go on-site 5 days a week. So our student A at the high school, the student was in class on a Wednesday, developed a headache and achiness during 7th hour, sent home and tested positive 2 days later. The health department requires me to count 48 hours prior from the start of symptoms to determine who are close contacts, quarantine for 14 days. So we've got it spelled out as far as classes and class sizes for A and B days, and then what it would be on site. So in our current hybrid model on A days, there are 3 larger class sizes of 11, 11, and 13. Only one of the classes couldn't social distance, and that should be 5 students. 5 students quarantined and no teachers quarantined. Seats were assigned in that classroom, which not only helped identify the close contacts, but also helped decrease the number of contacts on that Monday and Wednesday. So if we were on site, that would make 6 larger classes of 16, 21, 13, 13, 17, and 22, and more if we had students switch from remote to on-site for the second semester. So within a 6-foot perimeter, we would likely be quarantining 4 to 6 students in each larger class and possibly even a teacher here or there. Those 4 to 6 students multiplied by the larger 6 classes would affect 24 to 35 students per 1 positive student and maybe staff. Assigned seats in both cases is suggested and would be helpful. If seats aren't assigned in the classroom, the members quarantined would increase over the infectious 2 days in the hybrid model if the students didn't sit in the same seat. And if we were on site, it would be a 3-day infectious period, affecting up to 9 students. Unless we were able to create more space for lunch and have more tables available, on-site would have to allow for 4 students at a table, and if the positive student doesn't sit with the same 3 friends every lunch day, as they probably don't, the lunch quarantine could go to from 3 to 9 close contacts over that period. So then I looked at student B at the junior high, and in looking at that student, the numbers were very similar to student A at the high school for both hybrid and on-site. And then, of course, our student C at the intermediate center, we talked at the last meeting, and I pointed out at the elementary level having cohort groups of no more than, well, the CDC recommends 15 students and 2 staff, but the health department had gone with 17 students and 2 staff. So due to small groups and interactive learning, if a student or staff tested positive, the class and the staff were quarantined for 14 days, and this was the case with this student that developed symptoms and had been in the classroom 24 hours prior. So we've had a total of 4 classroom quarantines since the start of the school year.
Questions for those on there? Just a scenario that you went through to kind of give a viewpoint of how it would be different if we were in a different situation. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks. Just to summarize that, because I don't want to put words in the mouth, but just to be clear, even with some of the conservative guesswork, what you are ultimately saying is that if we were 5 days a week, everybody there, essentially in the scenarios that you provided based on real things that happened this first semester, the collateral damage in terms of quarantining in every possible instance at least doubles, if not in some cases would triple. Would that be a fair way to summarize? Yes? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Just a couple other things that kind of went through a lot of the questions. I did want to spent quite a bit of time with administration and Jana going through all of the different scenarios and setup for what would be our biggest challenges to bringing the kids back in 5 days a week, which I think of the things we looked at, most certainly that would be the change. The biggest change, I think, would be to bringing the kids back in 5 days instead of the every other day. Which is really what we'd like to get to someday. I mean, that's where we want to be. So probably our biggest challenge to that are 2 big things the administration noted. One is the lunch. Right now, we're able to do lunch in those 2 buildings, junior high and high school, and we're able to do it and be able to spread the kids out at lunch so they can take the mask off. This is the key time. And most certainly we're finding out that that's in society, that tends to be the time when people are, restaurants, that kind of thing, where people are eating. And so trying to keep those kids separated, and do we have room? Administration felt that would be a big challenge to keep kids separated and keep them apart without masks and simply not having enough tables, enough chairs, enough space, enough supervision to cover lunch if we bring everybody back. The second thing that is a challenge, while many classes would be in there and we'd still be good because the remote students, a lot of classes would go over that 17. Now, we can do over 17, but the county's criteria is you can go over 17, but then everybody's in mask, which that's not a problem, we're doing that anyway, but we expect everybody to be at least 6 feet or more apart, everybody in the classroom. That's where it gets to be a challenge. That doesn't mean there aren't other spaces we could go to, but you start running out of it. The gym is already being used for PE classes. Other spaces are being used for other classes, so it becomes a challenge. And again, I'm saying challenges. Are they insurmountable? And nothing is insurmountable if we try to work out and try to figure it out, but they do become challenges in how that's going to work. So those were their two biggest concerns on doing that. Let me see what else I was going to do. Other districts, Lisa, Gina, Suve. So another consideration into what we might do for second semester. And most certainly, I've put a recommendation together for second semester that has this in there. Most certainly, the vaccines appear to be coming faster than we thought. Again, not necessarily for kids. That'll probably come. The thing on the vaccines are how soon will they get here? How soon will they become readily available for folks in Baldwin to go get them when I need to? Most certainly, I think the vaccine can be a game changer once it becomes readily available to folks. And then, so we've got to have that consideration of when does that help change it for us? When do we hit a point where that changes? And that will be in my recommendation here. With that, I guess let me get to it then. In talking with administration and asking their advice and going through all of the things that we've looked at, my recommendation for second semester would be to begin the semester just as we are right now, under the same rules. We've had great consistency in the district so far. We have not had to close a building yet. We've had some quarantines, but I look at quarantining as one of those mitigation things like masks. It's something to help us keep going and keeps us safe. But my recommendation would be to continue. But what I'm not recommending for the board to say, let's go and do what we're doing right now until May. I'm not asking you to do that because I think we need to continue looking at what the vaccine eventually does for us. We would need notice of changing, a couple weeks to say, okay, in 2 weeks, we're going to make this change back to a 5-day, if it becomes available. And what I'm trying to be optimistic here and give some people hope, because I think that's what a lot of parents are wanting, some hope here, that there's a possibility this could go back to the 5 days a week thing. I can't guarantee that. I don't know that anybody can do that right now. But what I'd like to see is a recommendation to begin second semester as we are now, with the idea that if the vaccine becomes a game changer for us, or something else, that we could make an adjustment back to a 5-day week. And I asked the principals that question. The answers I got back, of course, are it's a challenge, but we could make that shift if you give us a week or two to make the adjustment, plan for it, make schedules. We could go back to that. So I'm clarifying my recommendation, which is qualifying my recommendation, that I recommend we stay as is because it's provided the best consistency. And, but be able to change when we have time. So I'm not asking for an approval to say, Paul, we're doing this till May. That's it. That's not what I'm asking for. The other part of this that I think has to be part of this is I do absolutely believe we need to allow for a remote choice for the remainder of the year. I think we need to give families that if they just are not comfortable, I don't care how the vaccine's working, I'm uncomfortable, I want to stay remote, I think we need to allow them to stay remote all the way to May. Or however long we go. So I think we keep that and we continue with the plan we've had. So that's my recommendation. And most certainly you guys have a discussion on what you want to do there or not. And I will try to answer some questions to things that you guys might have. And there might be all sorts of questions, I'm sure.
Well, Phil Harvey, can you hear me? Okay, so I would like to echo your sentiments exactly. So I'm looking through the surrounding districts and the dartboard kind of approach that everybody's taken. With this year and everything that's been going on, I think the one thing that I'm very proud that we've done as a board has been very consistent. Right? You look at some of these, and then, that whole first page is taken up by one district that's just changed and changed and changed and changed and changed and then changed again. So I think that what we've done is number one, very consistent. Number two, giving everybody choices for their own comfort level. So I think that we've done that nicely. And I think that just as you're recommending, I think that we start out staying the course of what we've got. Because what I don't want to do is introduce a bunch more inconsistencies. With what Lisa said about the quarantining, I mean, what we're doing is working. I don't see a reason to change it. I'd be curious, and when the data comes out, some of these, like Santa Fe Trail, when the school, when they have people in school all day, every day, the whole goal, and I kind of don't want to lose sight of the goal about mitigating or decreasing community spread, because it's become pretty apparent, I think, with Bronze has talked to us quite a bit, that the effect on the kids in school with this, and it's borne out. I think last time we talked, Lisa was up here, she said that there really hasn't been any intervention medically necessary for any of the students that have got it. So I don't think that long-term effects, who knows? But as far as community spread, community mitigation for those that are significantly at risk, I would sure like to see the data that comes out of where those places are that are in school every day, because I think that, like you said, our goal should be to have them in school every day. But I would echo your sentiments to say, hey, let's continue on with exactly what we're doing. Not changing really anything until we have an opportunity that makes it pretty clear that yes, we can change for the better and be nimble in that sense. Like you said, just a few weeks. That might be next week, it might be next month, it might be in February, whenever that is, to be pretty nimble to say, hey, I'll switch back to 5 days a week and now we don't wear masks or whatever it winds up being. I think that's great, and I do think that, like you said, I couldn't agree more. That I think leave that remote option again, with the idea being that we are allowing people to have the choice to do what they're comfortable with, and then maintain, at least in the things we have control over, maintain that consistency. So I'm wholeheartedly in favor of what you described.
Andy Parks, that was a key word for me too, Phil. I think we've been very consistent.
working in their best, as best they can in these extraordinary circumstances. I think we've done a good job staying the course. I'm grateful the county is involved and we've been able to follow their guidance as they shifted a bit in a way that I think has worked. So, yeah, I'm grateful for the recommendation, Paul. I agree. I think it's much easier to start on this path and adjust looser than it is to try to charge ahead with something loose and pull it back. It's a lot more safe.
Can you guys hear me? That is good. Chris Perry, by the way. I'm 95% on board with this. The only thing that gives me pause here is the junior high survey data. As Jen had mentioned, there's a lot of feedback within that of kind of advocating for a change to that 5-day. So I think if there were even like a scaffolded approach here where we can kind of go, at least initially consider going to 5 days a week for the junior high kids, that may be a better solution than going full pre-K through 12, 5 hours a day, but whenever that time comes. But
Chris, let me talk to that very thing. We have looked at what it would look like if we were able to do so, and I'm not recommending this yet, but we could take a step somewhere in between where maybe 7th and 8th graders could come back to 5 days a week when the time is right, and the high school could stay in their present situation. And we believe we could make that work. A challenge again, but we think we can make that work. Because most certainly the survey summary, there's a lot of people that want to see the 7th and 8th graders back in. Again, I think everybody would like to see that eventually, but I do want to say to you, I think that's a step. Maybe we take the whole dive when the time comes, but one step might be at some point we say, let's allow the 7th and 8th graders to come back in 5 days a week and let's see how that goes.
Give that a try for a month or so and then reintroduce the high schoolers or some progression like that.
Sure.
I've seen that there's not an answer to say about that, but between parents, staff, and students at the junior high level, there's an indication that we want to do that 5 days a week. Understanding the physical limitations of that as well as just logistical issues that creates, but that would be my phase 2 of this part of the recommendation.
I think part of what makes the junior high unique as well in terms of, and I don't, it's dangerous to read into and have much conjecture about a survey response, but what is unique about the junior high versus the other buildings is that you have 2 different operational models happening there, right? Because 6th grade is allowed to go every day, whereas 7th and 8th grade is on that different system. And the reason for that, and if some people have an oldest kid who's just now in 7th grade and it's still sort of newish, the reason for that is because 7th and 8th grade is handled, it's sort of preparation for high school, where 7th and 8th graders can be mixed together in the same strength and conditioning class. So it's different than the teachers who are certified at the 6th grade level. They can stay with their group in their classroom, and that complicates that. And the degree to which that might have impacted before it was separated out, the way we were seeing some of those survey results, if I have a kid in 6th grade who's going 5 days a week, well, it's in the same building, and I have a 7th grader, why can't they go too? I don't know to what, and again, I don't want to speculate too much, but the junior high in terms of that sense is unique in comparison to the other buildings that are doing it this way or that way or whatever. So that it's a little more nuanced at the junior high, and I think it's just something to remember as we interpret that data. Thank you. Kelly Bethel Smith, sorry I didn't say it either. It's new habit.
Terry Stevens. To add to that, Kelly, this is one of those you say, just to add to that, I think also with the 7th and 8th graders, they, not only are they in the same building, but I think there's also a drive for them a little bit more because they don't have the same activities as the high schoolers. They're not as involved, I think. That's kind of what they can't drive to their friend's house, or they're not at the football game. They're just not, they don't get as much socializing, I think. So if we did a phase type of thing, I would definitely But Nick, going to this, I like this plan a lot because I think that, or Paul's recommendation a lot, because I think that this year we became real caught up on this is the plan, and I love the consistency, and I was for it all the way. But there became a point where we thought, oh, we're kind of tied to what the county said, and we're tied to this, and the community came in and said, no, you said this, but things change so quickly, so much. And so now I think we can build on what we knew and know that we have to put out up front. Well, we need to have a little bit of flexibility here, and we're going to start this way with the consistency, but let's all work together, and we are listening to the community, and we are getting their input, and we want to work together as we go through this together. So I like Paul's recommendation.
Any other comments or discussion?
Related to the gating criteria, just kind of curious, how we're opting that program as of next week for testing at our buildings, right? Have the other districts in our county also opted in that program? I'm kind of curious about the outstanding percentage and how it will be affected by numbers of people that are getting put into that.
Good question, Chris. First of all, we had about 150 students that opted in. Little less than they had hoped for. I thought that was pretty good that we had 150 that wanted to go through the testing. We had about 60 staff members that are involved. In the county, Lawrence is participating, Eudora is participating, and we're participating. The only one that opted out, who is half in Jefferson County and half in Douglas County, is Perry LeCompton. They chose not to participate, but they're also working between two counties. And I don't know all the reasons. I was just informed that they would not be involved on the testing.
All right, so to recap, in this process, you guys, we have looked at this from the following angles. We've received recommendations from all administration, including Mr. Dorothy. We have thought about this through the lens of special education and delivering of services that are needed and how to continue to adapt in this environment. We had an achievement metrics discussion that Jana presented to us a month and a half ago so that we can keep our eye on equity gap considerations between on-site and remote. We've distributed parent, staff, and student surveys, not just once as a checkbox in the summer, but did that again recently. Our site councils have been up and running. We obviously all received public comments and have welcomed and encouraged public feedback. We've also looked at this through the lens of our social emotional professionals. Mr. Dorothy presented that to us a couple meetings back as well. We've talked about the things that we need to do to really keep our eye on those students who are either experiencing displacement or homeless. One administrator put it perfectly, where home is not a real thing, but rather an idea, how this impacts those students and what we're doing about that. And I think our social workers are doing a really great job of identifying those students and helping with resources. There's always more we can do, but if we don't talk about it, then we don't do stuff about it. So we're talking about it. We have talked about it. We'll continue to talk about it. We have been able to provide consistency. We've been able to be operational. We have not been able to, we have been able to not eliminate, but reduce the chaos of back and forth. I just can't imagine what it would be like to, hey, everybody 5 days a week, now everybody's remote, now everybody hybrid. I can't imagine what that's like for students or families. We've been able to control the collateral damage with the numbers of quarantining from this system, so we've looked at it through the lens of health. We've looked at it through the lens of fairness in terms of not having the perfect answer, but at least being able to provide families a choice about what they feel is most appropriate for their situation. And so I feel like and then also subs and absences. I really see what our schools are doing as kind of like living from paycheck to paycheck. You can make it work, but if there's like a medical catastrophe, then you're bankrupt. What our administrators and buildings are doing, they've been able to stretch and cover and be creative. I mean, some of the scheduling gymnastics that has happened is nothing short of amazing. But if you put that in a 5-day-a-week scenario, it's not just barely doable, it gets to a point where it's impossible. So it seems like we have consensus. I feel like we have done our due diligence as far as looking at this from a lot of different angles and not just one. And so with that, unless board members have other questions or discussion, I did just want to sort of recap where we've been and where we are. And if we're ready to make a motion, fine. If we're not, that's okay too. I'm going to give it a minute. But I did want to sort of recap where we started with this conversation and where we are currently. Anyone have anything to add? All right. With that, I move that we accept the recommendation put forward by Mr. Dorothy in that we will begin second semester with the same operational format as we had this first semester. However, we are not stipulating that that is how it will be for the entirety of the semester. We'll reevaluate as conditions make that acceptable to do so. But we will begin the second semester operationally in the same way as we did this semester, allowing for the choice for on-site versus, and also remote instruction, and that would continue as well.
Second.
Carrie has seconded. Sorry, I didn't announce my name again. I'm Kelly. I made the motion, excuse me. Carrie Stevens has seconded. All those in favor of accepting the motion as inarticulately as it was worded, please say aye and raise your right hand. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thanks, guys. All right, next item on the agenda is safe routes to school. Essentially, they came to us last time, and they are needing something a bit more formal. Can you elaborate on that a bit for us?
Yes, they informed me that they had to have the public input period and allow people to provide input, and I think they've shared that with you, what that input was. They are now asking if you guys would make an official motion to support the plan as presented, or amended if you want to amend it, but as presented, so that they can move forward. But they do need a formal motion from the board.
I move that this is Carrie Stevens, I move that we approve the plan as presented. by Safe Routes to School.
I'll second.
Carrie has moved and Tony has seconded to formally approve the plan recommended for Safe Routes to School. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We do not have any new business. Now we are item J, board member input. We are at co-op report.
I'll jump in first for the update. This is Chris Perry, the Open Co-op update. With Dan here today, he covered most of the ground from our previous meeting. The only thing I'll add to that is that for our December meeting, we are shifting to meeting in Zoom or with Zoom. We had the conversation that we weren't positive whether we were following county guidelines by getting the Wellsville, Eudora, and Baldwin folks together in one room, especially when there's been kind of flare-ups in each of those communities with COVID the last couple months here. So we're shifting to that meeting for our December meeting, and we'll kind of keep you guys updated on how that format looks going forward as well. Anything else, Susan? Nothing?
That's pretty short.
Yeah, it's a pretty short one. It didn't cover most of it, so yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Chris and Susan. Miscellaneous. Does any board member have anything under miscellaneous that they would like to contribute, bring forward?
You know, I actually do. This is Tony Brown, for those of you at home. This sort of goes with the recognition part of our meeting, although it wasn't listed as part of it. But last Thursday evening, at the annual meeting of the Douglas County Extension Office, that organization recognized all the school districts in Douglas County for their summer food programs they've run the last 2 years. And so that includes, obviously, the other school districts, but our own district, and they singled out Nikki Burnett as a person who has helped to administer that program for the last 2 summers. Last summer was obviously a challenging summer. This past summer, we're trying to get food to kids remotely. But I can tell you, as somebody who's participated in that program for 2 years, that has been a real blessing to Baldwin City and has provided food for countless kids in our school district. And so I just want to say congratulations to Nikki and to us as a district for administering that program for the last few years. And I hope it continues into the future because hunger doesn't stop when the school year stops. And so providing that over the summertime is really a great program.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Tony. I also, related to that, I need to apologize for an oversight during our recognition, so this is related to, I handed over the certificates to Coach Spielman, and then the 2 boys that were supposed to be recognized didn't end up making it. So I want to retroactively recognize Hudson Allen and Caleb Carr. They were the 2 Baldwin High School cross-country runners who qualified for state. And I didn't say anything special for them, and so I'm sorry. I thought they were going to be here, but I don't want them to be overlooked. The other thing under miscellaneous, we did have a request for anyone who's interested after the historic Bower Building project was presented at our last meeting. There was an invitation if individual board members want to write letters about that. The information was forwarded to you a week or so ago. And the last thing is that part 2 of Mr. Dorothy's evaluation survey. Thank you for turning in everything for part 1. I was able to take the qualitative data from that and then create part 2 of the survey. That will be sent out tonight. And this one's much easier. It's much shorter, but it's basically all of the comments that everyone gave, and then you will use a Likert scale indicating the degree to which you agree or disagree with that statement. And so that way we can give him both, and that will be ready for us to sign off on by our regular December meeting. So I've sent that to Megan, and she's gonna forward that on to you, just so you know it's coming. Okay, that's all I have. Superintendent's report? Nothing additional. Executive session, I don't believe we need anything further for that. And so we do need to approve our personnel report.
I move that we approve the personnel report.
Susan Chippeline, I second.
Thank you. Carrie has moved and Susan has seconded accepting the personnel report as presented. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your right hand.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Kay, for tech. She's had to go up and down the stairs at least 20 times because the microphone settings are different from the musical, and so I know she's had to make some adjustments, so she got her steps in today. Thank you, Kay. Thank you, Jana, for taking temps and greeting people at the door, and Megan for all the sanitation that occurs with microphones. Thanks for coming tonight. Have a happy Thanksgiving. All we need is a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Carrie has moved and Andy seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. All right, meeting adjourned.